Folks, we're in Sydney on a beautiful winter's day. It's blue sky. I'm in Clontarf at the beautiful home of a guy I've known for over a decade. He's an ad guy. He's a philosopher. He's got very interesting thoughts about life. He's lived a very big, long and large life. I'm welcoming to the podcast Bruce Matchett.
Hi, Sean.
We've been talking about doing this for a while and we finally are here.
Oh,
How
yeah.
are you enjoying being back in Australia?
Oh, it's... I don't like settling too much. I mean, my whole life I've been on the run. It's good to come back. My daughters are here and I've got great friends. So it's good.
One of the things you said to me just before we started was that you're writing a book about your early life. And I mean, that one of the things about the podcast is I like to sort of chart where people have come from. Those perceptive listeners amongst me may have detected that you're from Scotland.
Oh, yeah.
So we have a Scottishman and an Irishman sitting by a fire here. You might hear crackling in the background.
It sounds like a joke already.
Yeah.
But,
where were you born? What was your
I was born... Well, it's easy to pinpoint where I'm born now because Susan Boyle, the singer...
No relation.
No.
She's far too good looking for our family.
She's far too good looking. She looks a bit like you, actually.
Thank you. I'm sure she'd love to hear
She
that.
lives next door to my sister, and
Really?
I went to school with Susan's brother. So it's a very, very small kind of. If I said village, it sounds romantic. It's villages only by size. It's a bit of a dump called Blackburn in West Lothian.
So West Lothian is...
In Scotland, in between Glasgow and Edinburgh. If you drew a straight line between Glasgow and Edinburgh, put a little cross in the middle. It's cross being the right word in the middle.
I remember seeing Susan Boyle's house. It was very unassuming, sort
Yes.
of council terrace kind of thing, wasn't it?
Yeah, and that's exactly what Blackburn is, unassuming. A lot of characters and more pubs and shops. Yeah,
Mining?
my dad was a coal miner his entire life, and his dad came from Ireland, Cork, Irish Catholics at that time. It's one of the reasons for writing the book is that obviously I knew my dad and we got on exceptionally well, but I knew him as a dad. The guy who went to work. Oh, it's great.
Where were you in the family pecking order?
I was number 3, the third child and the last child. Why I'm doing the book is that you don't really know your dad until you talk to his friends. And after he died, I met a lot of his friends in a bar in a place called Stonyburn, which is near Blackburn. And they were telling me all Big Jackie stories and all the things. And I'm thinking, my God, I didn't know about my dad as a human being. He was a dad. He brought money in. He was strict when he had to be. You know, he did all the things, whatever, all those things. But I never knew him as a bloke. Yeah. So I wanted to write this book about growing up and what I was like as a person. And it's all about me, not about my children or anything. It's just me. And there's loads of great stories.
Trolling your own memories.
Trolling my own memories, which is great. It's almost rehabilitating as well. Because you know I'm an alcoholic and I've been sober 30 years.
Yeah.
And once you've been sober 30 years, you start to look back and think, why the hell did I get into that mess? And you start peeling back the layers and you get there eventually. But it started way back when I was a kid, you know. So by writing this story, it's all coming up to the surface again. And it's highly emotional.
It's a part of what this podcast does, actually. I mean, one of the things we're about, I'm trying to get is capture people, first of all, you never hear from.
Yeah.
Who've got a lot of wisdom from a life lived. But I also hear an awful lot. It's very interesting to say that a lot of people who I've done podcasts with, especially older people, their families go, I never knew that about my dad.
Yeah.
Or my wife. You know, and they find out things. Because I suppose, not the facade, but the masks we wear as father, worker, whatever, we don't, our people don't tend to see that other side to us.
No, you don't. And although my daughters are pretty close, I have 3 daughters and a son. 2 different marriages, but my daughters, I've shared some of the story with them, and they said, "Oh my God, I can't wait till it's finished."
Right.
And it was entirely just going to be for them. But I have shared it with a few people who don't know me, and they said, "Oh my God, you got to publish this." So maybe one day, maybe one day. It's not finished by any means. And the one thing I've learned through AA is that you can't lie to the man in the mirror, and you certainly can't lie to another alky. So it's a very honest book. And very rich and deep.
So you're
truthful.
calling it I.
It's called I, A-Y-E.
So let's
which
go
is
back
what my
and
dad
frame
would
a
say.
little bit of your childhood for me under that.
Under I. Well, my brother was killed when I was 7 in a motorbike accident. He was a bit of a genius, and I didn't know that. But he was in the national papers because we were a very working class family. My mother was a bus conductress, my dad was a coal miner. And then this genius pops up who is 6'4" and good looking. And he got into university. He hadn't started, but my dad got him a motorbike as a surprise gift, and he killed himself on it. So my mother...
Killed himself on it, or it was an accident?
It was an accident.
Right, okay.
Yeah, he hit a truck. And as a kid, I never really knew what was going on. I just knew he was not coming home. There was no psychologist, there was no help, there was nothing. And my mother, who was an agoraphobic anyway, she didn't like going outside the house much. She cocooned completely. And as you can imagine, it sort of destroys the household and destroys your joy as a kid at 7. You know, I used to sing a lot and play, and then it just everything was like, oh my God, there's a silence that like a blanket over you. And so the story is all about survival, really. Yeah, it's a funny story, believe it or not. Yeah. Like, for example, my mum worked in a supermarket kiosk, which is a very small, maybe 8 metres by 3.5 metres, this kiosk, where all the buses would stop, is attached to a supermarket.
For newspapers, cigarettes, that sort of thing.
All the usuals, maybe even half bottles of whiskey and all that stuff, you know. So, but she was terrified that I would go. She wouldn't let me go to school, so she would hide me in this kiosk in amongst the cardboard boxes.
She was scared you'd die.
She was frightened of losing her son. So I'd be sitting in amongst the cardboard boxes. If anyone came to the door, I had to really hide, you know, for deliveries and things. But all I would hear would be the conversations from the drunks or the early morning brigade, or you know, uncensored, of course. And I'd just trace on the boxes and draw on the boxes, and you know.
I mean, were you getting in? Would the schools have been pulling?
I don't know what happened. All I've got memories is being amongst cardboard boxes. I did. Yeah. Oh well, that's another story. Yeah. So the book's full of things like that.
Were you football mad?
I was football mad. I played football every day because there was nothing else to do. I mean, in those years, there's no Facebook. There's not, as you know, there's no television even. We didn't have television, no phones, nothing. You play football, and you play it on the street because there was no cars.
This is 50s Scotland.
This is 53.
And what was your team?
Well, I was a Catholic.
Right.
My brother was a Catholic. Most of my friends were supporting Celtic. I was supporting Hibernian, funny enough, in the Edinburgh side. Never went to many matches, but I played football regularly. I wasn't too bad. All my friends played football.
Yeah, I mean, it still is weirdly a huge defining part of Scotland.
It's a huge,
even worse than Ireland, almost.
It was. Well, what I believe and what I'm told is that's where most of the money collecting was done between Glasgow and Edinburgh to support either groups. Combine that with the fact that my father, we had a mixed marriage because my father was Catholic and they were part of the Sacred Heart, which means they were christened by a cardinal or something, baptised by a cardinal. My mother's father was head of the Orange Lodge. So it was pretty peculiar. And then,
so your mother was a Protestant?
My mother was orange as well. Staunch. But she didn't really care. Our father was. So we used to, he sent us to chapel. So I went to chapel like everybody else. But you had no choice. You went to Catholic school, you had to go to chapel. If you didn't, you got belted. Yeah.
Violence, gangs.
There were lots of violence in Blackburn. Lots. Poverty, violence, and a lot of my friends are dead. At the age of 17, drinking. Drugs and all sorts of stuff. Yeah.
And what was school like when you got there?
Strict, very strict.
Christian brothers.
Very strict. Praying before lunch, after playtime, before playtime. Yeah. And in fact, a lot of it was in Latin, which is hilarious because I didn't know what they were saying. You just learnt it like a times table. It didn't mean anything. And you just standing there and made sure you said it.
Kind of the same in English, isn't it?
Yes, but it was hilarious.
It's funny, I mean, because you grew up to have this kind of philosophy. When I met you, you've got this very philosophical outlook, and you're always looking for meaning. You like nothing more than a sit down and a chat about stuff with someone who you can spar with. Yeah, you're coming from this kind of environment where they're trying to corral you into being an automaton. Yeah, be it religious, be it football, be it mining, be it. Well, I mean, was the path for you down the mines? Was it being set for you?
No, not at all.
Okay.
I could draw. I still can draw. I spent most of my school time drawing on books, just on any piece of paper I could get. And when we had vans who turned up in the area. There'd be the fish van, the butcher's van, the potato van, the whatever van. I'd go out to the butcher's van and get tracing paper from them. We didn't have notepads and pens and paints. We didn't have money for that. And I would use all this tracing paper and draw on it like forever.
In pencil.
It's completely drawing with a pen or a biro. Right. So drawing. It was escapism. It was always, I now know it's almost a meditative state as well, where you can escape and live in your head just by drawing. And I did 2 oil paintings. The one I'll show you later, it's on the wall there. I did them at 15 and 16, and they're very good for that age. I know they are, and the teachers all knew that. My dad took them down, he drove me down, he borrowed the car and drove me down to Carlisle Art School and took these 2 paintings with me, and I got dragged in it. I wasn't quite 17. And he said, well, what has he got? Has he any certificates of that? And he says, no, but he can paint. And he says, yeah, he surely can. We'll take him in, but he'll have to do a foundation course and learn other things, and then do 3-year art school. Degree, So it was all those paintings, but we had no money. So
so you didn't even finish secondary school?
I finished, but I didn't get any A-levels type stuff. Yeah. So anyway, at 17, I had gained this place in art school. In the meantime, there's a place in Blackburn called the Blackburn Centre, and it had an enormous wall. And one of these guys had seen one of my little oil paints, and he said, would you like to paint on this wall? He said, we'll get you some oil paints. Would you do this? And so I spent months painting pop stars and politicians' portraits all on this wall, right? It's 50 years old now, and it's the Scottish Art Council have dug it up, taken the plaster off the wall and found it, and they want to keep it. It's a fantastic story from me. I thought, oh my God, I forgot all about that. And so all the locals all know it. No, they've copied it. They've digitally copied every piece of it. They want to preserve it.
For you though, like,
I said,
what were your mates saying about this?
Oh, they loved it. Yeah, because they'd even invite me down.
They suggested you to draw.
And at that time, when you're young, it was easy because girls liked it too. You're up a ladder painting and that, and you come down and chat to them.
Scottish Michelangelo.
It was hilarious. So that was before I went to art school.
I mean, one question before we move on to off this is your dad. Like, you're from a very working class, 50s, hard football, mining. You know, the effete nature of I want to be an artist. You know, having that encouragement from your dad and mum must have been rare.
There was no encouragement as such because they didn't know how to manoeuvre those within those circles or anything like that. But see, everybody thinks that coal miners are, dare I say, lower class or stupid or whatever.
I know.
No. My dad was forced into the mines because they had no money.
That's what I meant.
And he was really bright.
Yeah, but that's what I mean. Why? How he broke the chain?
Yeah.
You know, allowing you to go, and also you could break the chain and become an electrician or build a house or whatever. But going into paint in art school down south in Carlisle, you know what I mean?
Yes.
It's a very interesting. Can you pinpoint any? I mean, it might be your big brother's death.
Yes. Well, my big brother, when I say he was genius, he was brilliant in maths and brilliant at everything else, but he was also a brilliant artist. And so these paintings would be in the house that he did, and I was in awe of them. This is part of my alcoholism now going to come up, and this is the reason why. Okay. So every time I would produce something, my mother would say, that's good, son, but do you remember Ian? You remember how good he really was? Continually, I was never tall enough, I was never good enough, I was never good enough at maths, although I was pretty good. I wasn't as good looking, I wasn't this, wasn't that. It was always, she was regurgitating it to say, do you remember how good he was? And she was trying to bring him back into the memory of our lives. Whereas I just saw it as, oh my God, I'll never win this woman's favour or fill his shoes. Well, I couldn't fill his. I was another. Funny enough, he had a fantastic leather jacket, and I went upstairs to get it one day. I remember I was about 15. She went, "That'll never fit you, son. You remember he was 6'4". You're only wee Bruce, you know." Okay. And I'm going, yeah. I now know how hard it was, but maybe that's what drove me to success. Having this thing to try and prove to people that I'm actually all right. I'm good at what I do.
Without sounding too sort of spectral, did you ever feel him through you?
No, not at all. I mean, when you're 7 and he was 17.
By the time you were 17, you didn't feel him kind of guiding you or anything like that, or no?
No, later on in life, I've made contact with him. Funny enough, through different hypnosis and things, and I forgave my attitude towards him and thanked him for driving me. Lots of things like that have happened in my life. I didn't know an awful lot of any of this. Yeah. And I'm just trying to take it as you say it. And there was something there. And she wasn't doing it, obviously, from a mean point of view. No. It's tragic. It's tragic. Tragic point of view. Were you the only other boy? I was the only other boy. My sister got the same treatment. Funny enough, when I had children and I was living in New Zealand, I went back to see her. I mean, I went back regularly, but in this one point I thought, no, I was sober, So I had uncovered an awful lot of stuff of my sobriety. I was maybe 3 years sober. I went back and I sat her down and I told her what she'd done. And I forgave her. And she cried. And and she said, I didn't know. Yeah. And I says, no, of course you didn't know. But I do understand now. I've got children. Yeah. And I understand the grief you must have gone through.
Yeah, these people who go, oh, I don't have a favourite child. Oh, yeah, yes.
Right. I'm sure. Look, she was a loving woman, and my father was a great man in my eyes. They just had no skill when it came to it. And people didn't. They didn't even tell me the truth about how he died or anything. It was almost like, oh, he's not coming back tonight, son. Go and live at your auntie's. And it was other kids were telling me.
He's gone to live on a farm.
Yes, wherever,
When did you have your first drink? How did the relationship with booze start?
Like most children in our village, you'd be 15, 14, sneaking things and smuggling things out of the house. Although there wasn't an awful lot of booze in the house, but there was always a way. Parties. There was nothing else to do. It was miserable. Remember, there's somebody's parents would go away. So you go out their house and everybody bring drinks. It's just the same. I'm sure it's happening right now,
exactly, Exactly.
And I liked it. I liked it. It was an escapism. It's part
of growing up and
it's
escapism. And smoking and all that stuff.
Yeah. And people, it's okay. So lots of people do it, and some people get away with it, and they can handle it.
So tell me just a little bit about how it all kind of started with that relationship. So you were going to college in Carlisle. How did that work out?
I did sculpture to start with, and then I did graphic design. I loved art, and we had one tutor who came in called Ben Casey, and he would come and lecture us for one evening a week, but he was also working in advertising at the time, and because I could draw, he'd say, would you do these layouts? Because there was no computers then, it was squeaky markers and things. I said, yeah, and he'd give me £5, which is a hell of a lot of money. Right. That was enough money to drink all week. Yeah. After a year of me doing this, he says, you shouldn't be doing this sculpture and crap. He says, there's no money in art. You should come into advertising. And that's how it started. So I thought, whoa. And having no money all my life, I thought, that's it. And went down to Birmingham. I joined a small company there doing graphics and design. And then I went and worked for a newspaper. And the newspaper were doing classified ads. It was the Birmingham Evening Post. Okay. And what was good about that was, I had no idea it was actually helping me. I mean, it was good money, but you had to think fast. Clients would come in the door and say, I need an ad in tomorrow's paper. So you had to think up the words as well, the headline, and quickly come up with a concept. Yeah. They put it into typesetting and it was done. The first ad I did was it was for a nuts and bolts company in Walsall. And it says, are nuts and bolts a pain in the neck? And I drew Frankenstein with bolts in his neck. It was stupid stuff for those years.
But wire and plastic products.
But it was great because it was fast, it was furious, and it didn't need a lot of craft. So and it was good money.
So what age were you when you were in Birmingham?
Like
20.
If that, 20. Right. Yeah.
And were you very low? Were you very independent? Or like had your girlfriends and all that sort of stuff? Or?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and independent. I was drinking an awful lot then, though. Yeah.
So
escapism.
Right, on your own. Right, after work kind of thing.
During work, after work, sneaking it.
Okay, so at this stage you were getting out of the
it was building. It was building. But you don't know.
No, you don't know when. Right.
No, but there is a moment. No, there is a moment. I went to New Zealand to be creative director of Saatchi's. I was in Wellington, and I had been drinking a lot, and I had terrible pains in my stomach, and they took me to hospital, and I had acute pancreatitis, and I still remember the doctor coming to see me and saying, you're in terrible condition. The last 6 people we've had in here, 4 of them have died. He says, so we're going to get the priest in, and they gave me the last rites. Right. And I thought, this is not going to happen. I don't know what it is. Anyway, I ended up in a wheelchair, and they took me out, and went back to Saatchi's. And I should have known to give up, but I actually alcoholics are very clever at disguising things and lying as well. That I would say it was the stress. It was the stress of moving countries, stress of being in a new job, stress of running a fantastic agency. It wasn't the drink. You had a good excuse. Until 6 months later, I tried to hide it, and ended up in Sydney, and I had a big binge. And when I came back from Sydney, I thought, I lied to someone when they said, you've been drinking. I went, no, I'm going to AA. And I walked into an AA hall just to get some leaflets to prove that I was on a journey of sobriety. And I walked into the hall and the leaflets were actually on the stage and I couldn't get near them, so I had to sit there. And this man went, you've been drinking? I said, yeah, it's AA. And he went, oh, you don't get it, do you? He says, you're probably just here for the leaflets. And I went,
wow.
Anyway, I sat with him a long time.
Right.
And at
So
the end...
it wasn't a meeting, it was just
it was a big meeting.
Oh,
No, it was a big meeting.
Oh, right.
And it was in Ponsonby, and it was a Friday. And
But hang on now, you actually went into that meeting because you could have gone, I can't get the brochures, I'll come back another time.
Could have been, something was working. I was being guided.
Yeah.
Anyway, I sat there and finally got my leaflets. And he says, do you want a lift home? And I went, yeah, that'd be nice. And I told him the wrong address because I'm thinking, I don't want anybody to know it was me, I was an alky, you know. And he dropped me off. Anyway, next morning I had a terrible head and the phone went, who's this? Pick it up. And he says, it's Dave. Oh, he says, you met me at AA last night. I went, okay. He said, do you want to go to a meeting? And I went, yep. So off I went to a meeting. And they took me there. And I never drank again. It's 30 years almost. And I kept going. And I became, like any alcoholic, I became addicted to being in AA. For a long time. I used to go to prisons and give talks. I used to go to hospitals and still hold down a big job, you know. So it was completely dedicated until one guy, a couple of years into it, he went, what are you doing? He says, you've missed the point. He says, you've got to live life. It's safe here. Back off a little bit. You don't have to go every night. You've proven. Just slowly ease yourself back into sociability and meeting people and going out.
But there is a desire to share and help others.
Oh, it's the greatest thing, mate. I tell you, it's the best thing that's ever happened to me.
What sort of a drunk were you?
Well, the beauty about being a drunk is you can be anybody you want to be, which suits the moment. So you can either be the comedian when you're up, or you can be the solitary guy sitting in the corner. It's a wonderful introduction to advertising because you know, you're a good storyteller. You become you
and
like
so
to
much
talk,
of
and you
advertising
get
revolves around booze.
Oh man! And the other good thing is you can actually read people because when you're in a bar, you've got to avoid fights, you've got to avoid tension, you've got to try and win people over. It's the exact same thing when you're presenting work to clients. You know, so you become good at reading people.
So when you were just keeping the chronology, you were in Birmingham. Then did you move to London, or did you get out to New Zealand? Was there a jump in between?
After Birmingham, I went to Solihull in the West Midlands, and I went to a great agency called Cogents at that time, run by a guy called Mike Fox, who's no longer with us. Great creative director who taught me lots. And we had an office in London, so I would go down to London twice, back and forth. Still drinking an awful lot during this period. And then there's a big moment where. And it's called, they call it the geography, where most alcoholics want to change everybody around them because people they know too much about them, they know you're a drunk, you know.
They're pissing people off.
And so you call it geography, you run off somewhere.
Okay.
So that's why I ended up in New Zealand. I went all as far as you could possibly go and went to Satchi's, New Zealand.
Were you married then?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think you told a story to me once about your painting downstairs and you had the jam jars with...
Oh, yeah. I had this. I had this house in Worcestershire, and I had one room to myself with a few pinball machines and paints and drawing boards for doing layouts and things, and I had all these paint brushes and pots as you go.
Jam jars.
And I remember I had some friends around. I'm chatting away like mad, and suddenly, I'm so excited, and we're telling stories, and we're getting excited, and I take the paint brushes out of the pot. The hair was pushing up, it was just the wood in there, and there's clear liquid in there. And I start drinking it. And they go, what are you doing? And I went, I knew what I was doing because that's where I hid my vodka. But I'd forgot that these people are not really part of the tribe. So they were shocked, and I was like, oh my God, this is, it's reaching a new level.
Did friends support you or distance themselves from you?
Interesting. When I went back to New Zealand and got sober, I had to make a trip to London. I had won some awards. I took my daughter with me for safety, so that she was only 8 or 9 at the time, and I didn't want to go out. Anyway, I rung a few people, photographer friends who had been drinking with for years, famous guys, and they'd say, I heard you're alcoholic, but if you've given it up for 3 years, you can't possibly be, so let's go out and we'll have dinner tonight, we'll have a drink, we'll do this. I says, no, I'm okay. They never rang me again. And they were supposed to be friends. But the thing about those sort of friendships is the common denominator was drink.
Booze, yeah.
Drink, right? So I had another friend where the common denominator was friendship. And I rang Stuart, who was my best man at the time. Stuart said, what do you want to do? I said, let's go and feed some ducks. Yeah. And he didn't care. He just wanted to see me. Yeah. And then I thought, wow, that's it. It doesn't matter what the subject matter is. Yeah. You want to be with that person rather than just... Because drunks stick together. So it's a bit like if you want to play tennis, you ring a tennis player. Yeah. If you want to go to the movies, you go with somebody who likes going to the movies. Yeah. So if you want to drink, you ring a drinker.
Well, I've had a couple of alcoholics, friends of mine, very bravely as well. And thank you for sharing the honesty that you've shown on this, because one was Craig Smith, who you know.
Oh yeah, I know Craig.
And Craig, you know, we were good pals, but I was a drinking buddy of his. Whenever we were together, we were. I remember one time just towards the end before he went playing I went to see him in New York, and he was drinking 2 bottles for every one of mine in the afternoon on a Sunday. And I'm going, okay, this is out of control, because I am not known to be,
yeah, I know.
I can fairly handle. And so one of the things that happened with us two was, I said to him, I should not be around you, because I'm a guy who you associate only with when you're drunk. And so we kind of agreed that he loves me, and we text and whatever. He's now fine. I mean, he's married now, and he's got a great little kid, Scat, and all this. Do you ever think you could topple off again?
Oh yeah, I'm ever wary. You see, the thing is, people reach for drink when they're happy, when they're sad, when they're feeling sorry for themselves, when they're bored, and all these things are part of my life. Yeah. So I can remember one in particular case where I'd won Best of Show at the Clio's, and I was so excited, and everybody around me was celebrating, and I had my bow tie on, and I walked down and I found an AA meeting and sat with some down and outs for an hour, then went back. I just needed that cushion, to feel that security. I went back again, and I thought, you're not safe, Bruce, just go. So you tend to get a little bit depressed with success because you can't fully celebrate it, you can't let go.
Although I must say, I've even in the last say 10 years, maybe it's because I'm getting old myself, but in the last 10 years I find a huge number of my friends, especially in Ireland. I mean, we've got the bevy gene. One of the things that I did was from very early age, having seen the carnage it can wreak on people's lives, I chose to stop drinking for a month every year, and then by about 25 it became 2 months every year. So, and I still do that, and it's easy. I can do it, but I do it to keep showing myself that I can, because I don't want to get to say, and I have had a hope, and actually I wouldn't like to have to fully give it up, because I like wine with food and all that sort of stuff.
Look, it's got nothing to do with alcohol, mate. It's about, I'm an addictive guy. Yeah. I mean, I took up Muay Thai fighting when I was 57. It's ridiculous. Yeah. And I threw myself into it and trying to win. You know what I mean? Thailand training and things. I think, what are you doing? And, or if I take up running, I've got to manage everything. Yeah. Chocolate, I've got to manage everything. Now, the positive side to that is, if you can find something good and give it 1,000,000%, it works. So sometimes I've been successful at work because I thought, I'm going to see this through. I'm going to get right into this and plough all my way through. Or, like in the moment I'm on a sugar-free diet, right? Because I eat far too much chocolate. But once it's a bit like any alky or an addict. Once you put them on the railway lines, it's hard getting on the railway lines. Yeah.
I've had
to argue with Stephanie to say, she's saying, you got to do this diet, you got to do this. I'm on it. You can't get me off it now.
Right. Now please have some sugar.
No.
But yeah, I've seen a lot of my friends in Ireland who have just gone, okay, you know what? They talk about the facades and the masks and the jigger-jaggers the next morning, and how they feel and how they beat themselves up and how they feel worthless. And a lot of them have got off it. And tell me about AA. Do you think, I mean, it's clearly saved your life. I mean, one of the other stories you told me was this thing where I may have misremembered a bit, but you used to be in one pub and you'd nip into the other pub for a quick shot and go back in and stuff like that.
Or if you didn't drink fast enough, Sean, which I'm sure you don't compared to me, I would say, I'll meet you at 6 o'clock at a so-and-so pub. Well, I would go somewhere else first and have a few. And you're right. I would always go, it's my round, walk up to the bar. You'd be talking to people, and I would have a few at the bar, and then come back with a tray.
Yeah.
You know,
Okay.
it's nuts. It's completely nuts.
Tell me how the AA gets a bit of a criticism for. I mean, Doug Stanhope, one of my favorite comics, does a bit about the fact that really all it is God. You know, I mean, he's joking. He's being very deliberately provocative, and you know, but this idea that you know, 12 steps, it's been around forever. It has clearly saved hundreds of people's lives, and yet there's no. You can't go into a doctor and you give you an injection, stop you drinking. Yeah. You know, talk a bit about that.
It's just your mind. They say a power higher than yourself, right?
Would you believe in God? Because you're born a Catholic.
I'm not too sure, mate. I do believe there's something going on. And as you know, I had experiences in Buddhism and different things. I've tried so many different ways around things that I realised that it's in me. It's got nothing to do with any group of people. I think everybody's got the potential inside themselves to fix everything. And I think everybody knows the answers. We just got to uncover them. They're there. We know everything. Common sense.
I agree with that.
We know everything. We know when you know diets. We know what to do. Just eat less, for Christ's sake. Run a bit more. Yeah. We know all the answers to everything. And I had too many complications in my head. You know, that was it. So,
that's funny. One of the things about that what you just said there was the whole Me Too thing. And men and their approach to women. And I am going around saying to every man that I know, you know.
Of course we know.
You know when you're being inappropriate. You know when you're touching somebody the wrong way. You know when you're trying to get away with something. You know. The very start of the podcast, what did you say about the man in the mirror?
Yes. And the funny thing is,
applies to everything.
The older you get,
you know.
We even have a little trigger in their mind that goes, am I going to be rude here? Am I going to be gentle? I'm being a real prick. I know when I'm nasty. Yeah. I know what I'm doing. And it still doesn't stop me. No. Sometimes you still go ahead with it, but we know.
But then there's other, like there's excuses. There's the most Catholic man in the village who's also the business mogul who's walking all over families and, you know, all this kind of stuff. I mean, I went, you know, I pretty much haven't given up the idea there could be something there. So I suppose that makes me agnostic, I suppose. But I really did have to fill my God-shaped hole with something. Purpose. I have the word kindness front and center. Was I as kind as I could be today to everybody? Am I going to be as kind tomorrow? Was I unkind? How unkind? Do I need to apologize to somebody for my unkindness? It really works. Now, that's do unto others, I suppose, as they would do unto you in a very simplistic way. Yeah. But it changes my life in the sense that one of the theories I have is why the world is so reluctant to give up religion, which is clearly unlikely. I mean, it's revelation. We're talking about we're talking about magic. We're talking about myth, right? But we're so afraid to give it up. I think we can't give it up because what else is there if there's no God? If there's no afterlife, then we're all just here, and nihilism starts creeping in quickly.
I know, right?
Sorry,
rewind a little bit because. Remember, I'm an alkie. Now, the very biggest lessons being an alcoholic is you live one day at a time. It's much easier to handle religion than is there a God or is there nothing or what will happen to me when you live one day at a time. Yeah. And it's almost like living in the now, which is a much more current way of saying it.
I totally agree.
But to be aware of every minute in one day and think, that's okay, I've made it. I'll start again tomorrow, go to sleep. That means the whole lifespan is one day. And it helped me. It's helped me an awful lot, mate. Yeah. And it helps me a lot at work. People come up to me and say, we've got a pitch next week, we're going to do this, do that. I say, yep. I deal with what's in front of me today.
Do you apply that to relationships? Because one of my observations in relationships is so much of relationships is about the future. Is he the right guy for me? Are we going to have kids? Where are we going to live? The idea that it's this one day at a time thing. I live now with my current partner. Where we go on adventures. But I like to have another one around the corner. I can see not in a year's time. Next week. Yeah. Next week's her birthday, and then we're going to live caravan. You know.
I'm the same. I try. Yeah. I try and focus on the day, but it's a good thing to focus on. That's all. Yeah. Because if I looked at my life and I thought I had designed it or I had planned it, there's no way it could be the way it was. Yeah. And so what gives me the sort of power to think that I could plan the next 5 years. I mean, I haven't a clue what we're going to.
But so let's just move on. Then, so you became very successful in advertising. You also were a guy who worked for many years with John Singleton, who was one of the biggest ad agencies and ad men, larger than life characters in advertising in Australia. You were there for over 20 years, were you?
Yeah, 15.
15 as creative director. You hit the top of the ad game. When I met you, you were coming back from a monastery.
Yeah.
Tell me how that happened.
That's hilarious, because I had a lot of troubles in my life, which I don't really need to go into. There were more marriage and relationship things. I was earning a lot of money, and I had a lot of shares in that particular company. Full on, working exceptionally hard. And I decided to take time and sort my life out. I was going through a divorce at the time. I remember John Singleton saying to me, well, where are you going? Costa Brava or New York or something? I says, no, I'm off. I'm going to go and become a monk. And he just walked away from it. He didn't even speak a word anyway. The funny thing is, I had such a great time doing this and I have to tell you this story.
Well, first of all, how do you decide to
I didn't.
And where do you get where do you apply?
I'll tell you what. That's exactly. Lucky there is this thing called the internet, and I googled around a bit, and everywhere I looked was not suitable for me. And I came across a guy called Ajahn Suthep, who was a revolutionary in Thailand who was now paying penance in his 70s for all the bad things he'd done. And he was up near the Burmese border, and he had a small following of people. And he didn't speak very good English, but I managed to get someone who was on the internet and who'd set him up with some correspondence, a Canadian man who was also a Qigong master. And he said, oh, look, this guy's good. He says, and the meditations are great. I said, well, look, I've got trouble with meditation. I said, I can't really sit still. And he says, no. He's got this way of doing walking meditations and hand meditations. It's all movement. And I went, oh, yeah, that sounds a bit better. Mm-hmm. And so he gave me He gave me these instructions of how to get there, and I had to go up to the Mekong River, find a canoe, and go 5 hours up the river, and there'd be a big Buddha
it's like
at the side.
Apocalypse Now.
And you had to go up this track, and you'll find it. And that was all I got. And I told Stephanie, my wife here, and she's now my wife, and I said, look, I'm going to do this. And so I obviously had a shaved head anyway, because that's the way I was. And
I would have trouble there.
But I put all these adventure clothes on, as you do, you know, and a big pack, and I looked the part, you know. And I set off up to the top national Thailand, yeah. And I get down, and I remember wandering down to these guys who had the boats, and I said, I want to go to blah, 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 and they didn't understand the word I was saying. I was pointing to my head, and I'm going, Wataton, Buddha, Wataton. And they're going, oh, okay. So I paid them some money. And then one guy and me set up in this boat, and it's getting darker. Yeah. The sun's coming down, and we still had an hour to go before he says, keep going, pointing. Anyway, he throws me out, and I'm looking around, I could see a Buddha on the way in the distance, so I got this track. I was shitting myself. Got this track, and I heard all this chanting. There's all these young monks in the jungle, making funny chants and walking around. There's a little old man with enormous glasses, 1960s style, big frames. And he looked at me, and he went, you've come home. He says, sit. And I sat. And it was just the greatest adventure after that. I sat there, and I learned so much about being present, being aware, meaningful dialogue, real conversations rather than chat. You know, if you only speak when you want to say something worth saying and all this. And I went on for a long time, and finish eating at 5 a.m, 5:30, making flutes and wandering around and just learning things. And in fact, the greatest lesson, I've got to tell you this, the greatest lesson I ever learned was from a man called Suni, who played the flute, and he was a very rich man who'd given all his money away. And he said, Bruce, you're going to teach me something, and I will teach you something, because that's why people meet. We have lessons together. So he teaches me these breathing exercises where you chi and bring it all up and everything. I spent days with him. And I thought, well, I don't know what I can teach this man. I'm just a guy in advertising, right? One day I saw him, and he was sitting with a small sketch pad, and he had little kids' watercolours, and they were terrible, terrible paintings of a Buddha in a monastery. And he says, "Oh, I like this. I like to paint." And he says, "And I'll sell them one day." And I went, "Oh dear, that's not going to work." And all the other monks are even giggling, you know. Anyway, I showed him a little bit about perspective, and they still were terrible, mate. Anyway, another week later, we're all down in this village, and we're making flutes for children, charitable. And he says, "I'm going to sell my paintings now." And he walked off, and he laid them all out in the road, little stones on the corner to hold them down. And he was there for hours and hours. And he came back and he'd sold them. But he only got like 60 back for the whole collection and everything, right? And he was so overjoyed.
It's worth 7 million.
And he came back and he says, "Good, I now have enough money to buy another pad."
Wow, that's good.
And I went, "Oh, you bastard. You have taught me the biggest lesson in my life. I'm good at art and I'm terrified to paint. I want to be Picasso." He was a working artist, and that was a life lesson. He just jumped in and did it. And all he wanted to do was do it again. And he had now had enough funds to do it again. And I was sitting there thinking, I've got these paintings and I don't even want to show anybody. I'm terrified of criticism. I want to be Picasso. I want something to be 10 grand every painting at least. What a idiot I was. It was a great lesson.
This is where I met you. We had lunch in that hotel where they do the Ad Fest, and you were just back from that because Annie, our friend, mutual friend Annie Green, was looking to hire you, and you were really radiant and radiating when I met you first. No, you were a really interesting guy. We ended up talking all afternoon. Andy, you were talking. You came up, I think, at the monastery. You had this dog thing, the black dog, white dog. Yeah. You want to talk about that? No, I thought it was very good.
Oh, look, the funny thing about that is, wherever I go, I wander around with old leather books and make notes because my memory's not that good. Maybe it was the alcoholism, or whatever, but I scribble everything down. These monks, especially Ajahn Sutta, could not speak English very well, and he was trying to explain to me about how these complications in your head work. And I would draw these little animals, and some would have a lot of teeth, and I'd call one jealousy, and I'd call one fear, and one trust as he was speaking. Anyway, I'd been doing this for a good few weeks, and he asked to see what I was doing, because he says, "You're always drawing in your book." And I said, "Well, this is me trying to, in my way, understand what you're saying here about the things that are going on in my head." And he sat there and he smiled, and a Canadian guy who can speak Thai to explain to him what I was doing. And what I was doing was, when I do these walking meditations, he was explaining that a thought will come up. He says, "No, you don't kill the thought, you identify the thought. Where is that thought coming from? Is it fear or is it trust?" And I would get the fear thought and throw it away. And the more I got rid of the fear thoughts, some other thoughts would come up which were real trusting thoughts. So I thought, wow. And I said, I must be feeding that part and not the other. So hence these animals were getting bigger and smaller. So the fear dog was getting smaller and the trust dog was getting bigger. And so I made all these animals and drew them all, wrote all my notes. I remember at one stage the abbot came down to see me and he said, "I want to hear about your dogs that live in your head." And I showed him these books. And he said, "Well, why don't you come and live with us and stay for a long time? We build you hut and you come and do this." He says, "You have to buy the timber, but we can build it for you." My God, that's a dilemma, you know, and this wonderful paradise of just doing something for yourself. And anyway, he took me to Burma. We went on a long trek. Truck took us and we went on a long trek. And it was a circle of dialogue. And there was this, it was like a Montessori school for teenagers and things who were in like a rehab. So a lot of Thais, when they want to get back to society, they're going to get married, they go and become a monk to cleanse themselves and be a better man, you know, like a social service thing. And so I thought, oh, this will be great. I'll go along and I'll listen. This will be fantastic, you know. And so we sat in the dialogue circle, and then the monk says, "Now Bruce will talk about his dogs." And I went, "Guys, I am just.
Thanks for the warning.
I said, I'm just a guy from. I remember saying this, and there was a man there. This Canadian guy was this Qigong master, and I said, I'm just a guy in advertising. I create desire. You guys are trying to unravel desire, and he says, that's why you're here. The man who creates it can unravel it, unravel desire, and so I was like shocked. And anyway, I gave this pidgin English type lecture, and it was translated, and then they all cheered about these dogs. So that's when I met Andy, and then Andy told you about the dogs, and I've still got all.
Told me.
Did I tell you?
Yeah.
And I've still got all my notes, all my drawings, and Andy keeps saying to me, "When the hell are you going to write this?" You know?
What really, what I really liked about it was the simplicity of it, and I am just seeing so much. I don't know whether it's because I'm getting old, or whether I'm back in Ireland, or whatever, but I'm seeing so much mental illness, possibly caused by our obsession with technology and where we've gone, even in 10 years. It's introversion, this loneliness, this stuff like this, and I like the simplicity of it is actually driven, depression, all these things are driven by thoughts coming into your head that you allow them to have power over you.
That's exactly it.
And so the simplicity of this thing of realizing early, I'm feeding this dog, that's the wrong dog to be given food to. It also has a Venn diagram with your alcoholism.
Yeah.
One of the things, though, that I'm intrigued to talk to you about is this sort of enlightenment and this search for meaning that you have gone through, particularly probably in the last 20 years more than the first. You're still in advertising. And I find it, I want to talk about, like, my journey has been very early on. I went, talk about going to a monastery to cleanse your sins. I find advertising to be ethically questionable, morally and ethically questionable as a life, for a life. Now, also, by the way, but it's very easy for me to say after I've spent 21 years cashing up out of it, right? So I'm not, I'm fully appreciative of my sort of, my slight...
Okay, I understand where you come from, and there's a few stock answers I could give on that, which I won't give. But I remember leaving the monastery and getting on the boat, and the monk was crying, and they gave me his begging bowl that he'd had as a revolutionary, and he says, keep this, and it'll remind you of everything. And I've still got it upstairs. Okay? And I says, yeah, but...
Used it for a Super Noodles campaign.
If only.
Sorry,
if only. If only. It's still upstairs now. I should unpack it again and have a look at it. But anyway, I was tempted to stay. It'd been crazy, but I was tempted to stay. And he said to me, you will do more good going back into your profession and being nice to people. He says, we just do this up here amongst ourselves. Yeah. We don't help anybody, really. We've helped you. I think I've got this one day at a time. This thing, I'm far gentler. I'm more appreciative. I don't get too stressed about it now. It's advertising.
Notice that in me as well.
At the moment, I'm in an agency where there's a lot of stress because we're small and we have to compete with the big boys. But we laugh a lot, and there's a lot of nice people who I'm building really good relationships. And that is its reward. The game and the puzzle of advertising will always be there, and I see it as a puzzle. It's just a game. I've got to come up with 6 or 7 words to something.
It's meaningless, though.
Oh,
in many respects. Like, for example,
I do some charitable work too, and that makes you feel good. But again, that's a stock answer. Yes, a stock answer.
Yeah, no. The point of so let me just like you weren't you had divorce and stuff like that, but you're not stuck for a few bob. Would the idea that you would make that book about the dogs, just to take one thing, because I know you have a load of these things, and we could be here for hours talking about all the little ideas you have, but making that a thing. Like The Power of Now, or whatever.
I'd love to do it. I haven't got the balls to
Why
do
not?
it. It's a strange one. It's a strange one. It takes courage, and yet some of my friends say I've been very courageous with all the different things I've tried in my life.
Yeah.
But the courage to walk away from something that's... Remember, let's rewind right to the very beginning of the conversation. My dad was a coal miner. My mum was a bus conductress. We lived from day to day. On a Thursday there'd be nothing. Got to wait till a Friday. There's a fear, and that's my biggest thing. And my wife Stephanie is trying to guide me through this, to let go. But there's always this thing of I need this extra parachute, 2 parachutes, I'm being honest. There's
No,
a fear,
I hear you.
and that fear's going to come to an end soon because I'll be 65 in another month or two, and I will.
We're sitting here with, you might have heard apples being chewed. Little curly-headed Leo, Bruce's kid, is playing Minecraft here with his headphones on, so he's not hearing all the alcoholic conversations that we're having. But, talking of fear, I know if I had a little fellow like that in my life, I would be back working in advertising.
Yeah.
Because I know I can make money for him and his future and whatever.
No, that fear is not there anymore because I'm going to build a strong human being. My other 3 daughters are in advertising.
Yeah.
They're very, very bright children. But we've got him in a Montessori school. We're looking at the Green School in Bali. They're living in the jungle and doing things. We're going to live a different lifestyle and a different expression of things, a very creative and artistic lifestyle, which I never had access to as a kid. And he plays the guitar, he surfs. And in fact, the irony of this entire podcast is that it started off with me explaining that when I was 7, I was happy and joyful. And the fact that the book is called I, but it's really In Search of Wee Bruce. To find that joyfulness again that escaped me after my brother's death and the way the family reacted to it. That I'm now seeing as joy. He's now 9 and he is happy, he sings, he does all those things. And it's almost like I can release all that and give him a different way of life rather than the struggles that I've had to endure and push and drive. And that's not through money. That won't be through money. That will be through a guiding to parents, guiding them to say, do whatever you want to do, son. And whether you want to be a surfer, skateboarder, who cares? It doesn't matter.
How do you view the world in general, looking at his place and your place as a 65-year-old, him as a 9-year-old? Are you optimistic about the future of the world? Or?
Yeah, I think the spirit. When I started reading these so-called weird books like The Power of Now and all this crap, right, or Buddhist books, you had to cover it in brown paper when you went anywhere. You know, in the 80s, even 90s. Yeah. Now it's in every airport, it's everywhere. People talk about it, I'm talking to you about it. A lot of my friends are open to the spirituality that I have and the adventures I've had and the stories I tell. That was never, you'd have to keep your mouth shut. So I think there's a world order that's changing.
There's more acceptance.
There's healers advertising, there's different things, it's all open. You know, it's not just Catholicism, Protestantism, Buddhism and all. There's tons of way forward. And yes, there'll be greedy people in the world, like there always has been, making trillions and billions, but I think the world will turn it around. I think
the thing you mentioned there is true as well for me, because I think I really sense religion is going to start falling away, particularly in first world countries. It already is in many cases. I mean, in Ireland, church attendance is down around the 20% mark. When I was growing up, it was about the 70% mark. That's just on Sunday. I talked about the kindness thing earlier. People are going to need to fill that hole. You know, whether it's the dogs thing, or whether it's the power of now, or whether it's some new thing from the East or Buddhist or whatever. People are going to be crying out for how to manage and navigate their way through life in a framework that maybe doesn't include an afterlife.
Yeah.
And I'm sorry for going back on this, but the afterlife is almost the thing that gets us to the other side, because we know if we're good, we'll have, we know that there's a reward. And this is why I think that you're, because you are very, I've always been, when I've been talking to you, very interesting guy to talk to, because you've, unlike most people, you spend an awful lot of your time trying to sort it out, even if it's just on a day-by-day basis, but you have ideas. And what would you say to your younger wee Bruce, if you had to go back and say something to him?
I can see him right now in my head, and I'd say, don't worry, we'll sort it out, and thanks for guiding me, and because I know when I'm being miserable, and I do go into dark holes like most human beings, and I keep thinking, you don't need to, but I do. I like it. I like the dark. I like.
What do you like about it?
It's a world I know in my head. It's not escapism. It's a very visual world and a very rich.
Does it scare you?
I see pictures in my head and colours and things. I love it. It's like a trip without drugs. When I close my eyes and look, and I can sit for hours.
Yeah.
I can wake up during the night. I don't sleep very well most times, and I can lay there and it's a fantasy world, you know.
Yeah.
And that might have been as a kid, being in my room most of the time, or in amongst the cardboard boxes. I don't know, but it's a wonderful world, and sometimes, you know, I can be highly sociable because you have to talk a lot when you're at work.
Yeah.
But I don't tolerate fools. I don't like idle chat. I really don't. I'm over it. And when you get older, you become more selective who you want to spend time with.
Yeah.
And AA taught me that too. So I can even say to someone, look, I like working with you, but I don't really want to have lunch with you. And I can say things like that. Yeah. I don't care.
We get to work curmudgeonly as we get older. That's
There's no time.
But actually, there's a truth to it.
I quite like sitting on my own under a tree. You know, sorry.
Bruce Matchett, thank you for spending your time. It's very, very interesting always every time I sit down and talk to you. It's been great having a chat with you. Look after yourself. We enjoyed it.
Thank you. Bye, son.